with what the U.S. said. So if I write a book, you can tell people, well, look, go read my book because there is some doubt regarding what the U.S. told us about Osama bin Laden.
So, you know what? We could say that about anything, I guess, then.
Yeah, but this is all right. Let me quickly do.
Frederick Douglass wrote a book. Does that mean that he only wrote that book and told those stories because he was lying?
No. I think that's different, though.
Why is that different?
Because did anyone say anything regarding Frederick Douglass before he came out and write his book?
Well, yeah,
Because this one, Osama bin Laden, America came out and said, we killed Osama bin Laden. This guy's coming out and say, no, Osama bin Laden died 5 years before the U.S. said they killed him. So the U.S. might have killed someone that looked like Osama bin Laden, and they wanted to get the point, so to speak, for killing Osama bin Laden, and for people to feel happy now that we're supposed to kill the number one
What
terrorist.
about the latest terrorist that they've killed the leader of
ISIS?
Uh-huh. Have you heard that? Have you seen that story?
Today?
Yes, this was on yesterday.
No. I didn't see that.
So, but I mean, you got to figure out or come to some determination on what you're going to accept.
So they have this video in Russian. Of course, it's in Russian, So that is something that, you just think about. Maybe not.
According to the New York Times, ISIS official killed in U.S. raid in Syria. Pentagon says American Special Operation Forces mounted a rare raid into eastern Syria early Sunday, killing a leader of the Islamic State and about a dozen militant fighters, as well as capturing his wife and freeing the 18-year-old Yazidi woman who Pentagon officials said had been held as a slave in the first successful raid by American troops since the military campaign against the Islamic State began last year. 24 Delta Force commandos entered Syria aboard Black Hawk helicopters and V-22 Ospreys and killed the leader, a man known as Abu Saif. One American military official described him as the Islamic State's emir of oil and gas. Even so, he's a mid-level leader in the organization. One terrorism analyst compared him to Al Capone's accountant. One's likely to be replaceable in a fairly short order, and the operation, while successful, comes as the Islamic State has been advancing in the Iraqi city of Ramadi, demonstrating that the fight against the Sunni militant group in both Iraq and Syria remains very fluid. So, they don't know what they're doing. So we know that for sure. They really don't.
So here's a good one for you.
Defense. I'm ready for you. Department officials said the Delta Force soldiers carrying out the raid came under fire soon after they landed near a building used by Abu Saif as his residence in Amir, about 20 miles southeast of Deir al-Zur, near the oil facilities that he oversaw for the Islamic State. We just don't know.
Now, we talk about... You finished with that one?
Yeah, I'm not going to read it. It's a long article.
Yeah, we talk about schools, right? We changing up here a little bit. Connecticut makes rare progress on school segregation as America moves forward. Right? And then there is this one, which is important. 61 years after Brunswick's Board of Education, many schools remain separate and unequal. So how far have we really come? This is in the Huffington Post.
What other headlines you got there?
What are the
What
headlines?
about this, 170 face murder-related charges in the Waco biker melee?
Why are white gangs members destroying their own communities?
So this is like white-on-white crime.
White-on-white crime.
Yeah.
It's the first time that I've seen a headline that says white on white.
But is that in the? I think it's in the Black Voices on HuffPo or something else. That's why that's titled.
That's why
now.
it's like that.
Yeah, but they don't really
in
they're not
mainstream
playing
media.
it. They don't play. They're not playing it up in mainstream media like.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. But here it is right here. It's as a
What's
matter
the
of
story
we
with
got the
this
audio.
anyway? Let me hear.
Let's listen to the audio.
I will tell you that everybody that I've heard that has been transported to the hospital or that is deceased is part of the gangs that were here. How that happened? Let's say it's Sunday and somebody was looking out for us is the only way to describe that. There were so many rounds fired from bad guy weapons here. It is amazing that or that innocent civilians were not injured here. And again, like I said, we're talking 25 yards or 25 feet, 50 feet away was a restaurant full of family members, and none of those, they are all unscathed. I saw bullet holes in cars. I saw windows shattered out of cars. There are police officers' cars that have been hit. There are bikes that are tumped over. And that's the best way that, as one of the officers that was here said, it was absolute complete chaos when they pulled up on scene. You can imagine with the amount of gunshots that were going off, the number of people fleeing and running and trying to get away, and the number of people that were killed and injured. You had 25 plus individuals that were shot or injured at this particular scene, 8 of which are dead and 18 that are transported, 9 of which are dead.
You know what strikes me? How come they didn't bring no armored trucks and cars and all kind of thing?
Well, the first. Let me turn this up. The first question I'm like, as I'm reading this article here in the Times, is why weren't these gangs, if they know, this is the way they're described. Let's see. The Bandidos and the Cossacks. The Bandidos started in 1966 and the Cossacks in 1969. The Bandidos became the largest states of Texas, biggest motorcycle group, declared by the government to be a criminal enterprise involved in the distribution of drugs and also engaged in legal advocacy. So this is a criminal syndicate that's involved in drug distribution.
Yes, they have, and they have done.
Yeah, and so why were these groups ever infiltrated?
They were infiltrated.
Infiltrated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah.
So, but no one did anything
And,
to dismantle them.
ATF,
why are they still existing?
Is it ATF?
Yeah.
They had a special on television where they infiltrated these biker gangs because they were doing drugs and everything else, but
And doing drugs or selling drugs?
doing and selling.
Okay.
Following a spate, this is in the Huffington Post, Black Voices. Following a spate of white-on-white violence over the weekend in Waco, Texas, that claimed 9 lives and resulted in scores of casualty and over 190 arrests, there has been a marked lack of interest in talking about where the event fits into the epidemic of such white criminal behavior in the U.S., despite the fact that every year more white people are murdered by white people than by any other group. In recent years, a national pattern has begun to emerge in the wake of shootings in which a black man is killed by a white man. Of course, the death is a tragedy, goes the narrative, but the dead man probably provoked the killing somehow. And more importantly, if you truly care about young black men, why aren't you concerned about black-on-black violence? Why aren't you more concerned about black-on-black violence? The same pattern doesn't hold even when white-on-white crime unfolds in full view of the nation, as it did in the parking lots of the Twin Peaks restaurants on Sunday. Yet white-on-white crime should be a huge concern because it's out of control. Granted, there are 201 thugs off the street for the time being, but what about the rest of them? Around 83% of white victims in 2011 were murdered by other whites, based on the most recent FBI homicide data. As many as 3,172 white people were killed in 2011, and 2,630 of them lost their lives at the hands of another white person. That is compared to 2,695 black people, 2,447 of whom were killed by another black person. So again, is this reported by the mainstream media?
Well, I'm looking at the Times article about.
What's the headline?
The headline for the New York Times. I thought I read it already. Let me see. Let me go back up to the top of the article. The headline is up to 170 face murder-related charges and Waco biker melee. Here it's clear that the police and all legal authorities have recognized these guys as gang members.
Yeah, that was
but
the
they
New
would
York
rather
Times.
call themselves clubs.
So
I guess we can't call them thugs either. We'll just call them members.
So
It
CNN
says,
has-
but due to law enforcement officials, groups like the Bandidos and the Cossacks amount to crime syndicates that are prone to violent clashes over geographic territory and real and perceived slights. In 2011, the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security added the Bandidos, along with the Hells Angels, the Outlaws, and Mongols to a list of known criminal organizations that also includes the Mafia, the Chinese Triads, and the Japanese syndicate Yakuza. This is interesting because we were just talking about syndicates in class the other day.
Now here's CNN audio. This is from CNN. And there's a picture with this one police officer with a big gun. It's pointed downwards. And the rest of them guys are just hanging out with their, jackets and their, and their cell phone and everything else. And it seemed like if, they're just having fun and taking it easy. Let's see if this one is going to come up now. Here we go. The history and violence.
At least 5 motorcycle gangs gathered at Waco's Twin Peaks restaurant when the midday fight broke out. At its root, a rivalry over turf and recruits. Their names meant to intimidate the Outlaws, Scimitars, Cossacks, Bandidos. With a history of violence and criminal behavior, the Justice Department calls them OMGs, or Organized Motorcycle Gangs. If you see them coming, that other OMG just might fit the bill. This 2002 brawl among rival gangs left 3 dead. The fight, captured on casino surveillance cameras, maybe most shocking, it was in the middle of Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada, after members of rival gangs, Hells Angels and Mongols, tried to use the same entrance. Even non-criminal motorcycle gangs have engaged in aggressive behavior. 2013, New York City, when motorcyclist Christopher Cruz applied his brakes in front of Alex Lien's vehicle. Lien bumped the motorcycle, causing minor injuries. When he stopped to help, other motorcyclists began beating the SUV with their helmets. Terrified, Lien fled, hitting 2 other motorcyclists until he was finally stopped, pulled from his SUV and beaten, while his wife and 2-year-old daughter watched on. Nationwide, there are about 500 large gangs with multiple chapters and some 2,500 smaller organized motorcycle gangs. The FBI estimates in all some 44,000 people belong to OMGs. The motorcycle gang threat is rated at similar levels to prison, street, and neighborhood gangs. Many large motorcycle gangs make their living producing and or distributing drugs like meth, cocaine, ecstasy, heroin, and marijuana. In more recent years, some have formed alliances with Mexican drug cartels. Motorcycle gangs, a notorious part of American culture. Around about as long as the motorcycle itself. The FX hit series Sons of Anarchy about the friction within a motorcycle gang in the fictional town of Charming, California. It is nowhere near the first portrayal. America's interest in motorcycle gang culture immortalized in the 1953 film The Wild One. It was based on a real-life biker brawl in Hollister, California in 1947. The next chapter in motorcycle gang violence now being written.
Trivago does the work.
Well, there you have it. You know what? That was such a tame discussion.
I like this comment somebody wrote in the New York Times. let's not be too hasty to judge these people. I